For years, the empath has been treated like a public utility, the human shock absorber, the emotional landfill where other people dump what they refuse to carry. You've been the one who listens, the one who understands, the one who softens the room so everyone else can stay comfortable. You've absorbed pain that wasn't yours, explained people who didn't deserve translation, and stayed silent because you thought your silence was maturity. And somewhere along the way, you were trained to believe the same lie over and over in 1,000 different forms, that your sensitivity is a weakness, that you feel too much, that you're too emotional, too intense, too much. But what if the era that made you feel like a problem was actually an era that was training you? What if the years you call suffering were the most brutal education in human psychology you could have received? Carl Jung understood something that modern culture still pretends not to see. The psyche does not evolve in a straight line. It evolves through opposites. It swings. It overcorrects. It builds tension, stores pressure, then reverses into a higher form. Jung watched this pattern in individuals and in civilizations. When one principle dominates long enough, it produces its own counterforce. When a culture worships intellect, feeling returns as rebellion. When a society rewards cruelty, conscience returns as necessity. When manipulation becomes normal, perception becomes priceless. There is a point where a dominant pattern reaches its extreme and begins to collapse under its own weight. Jung called this the law of opposites, a psychological rhythm as old as history itself. And if you look around honestly, you can feel it. We have lived through an age where narcissism became fashionable, where selfishness got rebranded as confidence, where emotional exploitation got called boundaries by people who use boundaries as a weapon, not a principle, where manipulation got upgraded into strategy, where being unbothered became a badge of superiority and empathy became something naive people do until they grow up. But here's the twist. Empaths did not survive this age by accident. They survived it because they were built for it. They were harmed by it, yes, but they were also studying it, whether they realized it or not. Every time someone lied with a smile, the empath noticed the timing, the tone, the mismatch in the eyes. Every time someone forgot your needs but remembered theirs perfectly, the empath registered the pattern. Every time guilt was used like a leash. Every time affection was withheld as punishment. Every time affection was given as bait, the empath cataloged it. Not in a spreadsheet, not consciously like a scientist in a lab, but in the nervous system, in intuition, in micro-memories that never fully leave. While the narcissistic personality was chasing short-term wins, the empath was building a psychological database of how people manipulate, how they rationalize, and how they drain life out of others without ever admitting it. The empath has been in the world's most unforgiving apprenticeship, and the graduation is not applause. It is transformation. Because what happens when the shock absorber becomes the engine? What happens when the one who has been quietly tracking every inconsistency finally stops trying to preserve the peace? Not by becoming cold, not by numbing out, not by pretending they don't feel, because an empath can't fake that for long, but by becoming strategically disciplined, by learning to aim their sensitivity instead of leaking it. That is the moment the social order flips, not through force, but through clarity. And clarity is devastating to anyone whose power depends on confusion. To understand what's changing, you have to see what an empath actually is. Not the stereotype of a fragile, trembling person who cries at everything. That's not a definition. That's a caricature built by people who benefit from dismissing empathic intelligence. A real empath is someone whose perception is tuned to human subtext. They sense what isn't said. They detect shifts before words appear. They notice micro-expressions, emotional contradictions, the slight changes in voice that reveal hidden agendas. They walk into a room and read the temperature instantly. They know who's performing and who's present. They don't just hear language, they hear motive. This isn't sentimental softness. This is advanced psychological sensitivity, the kind of perception most people only develop after they've been hurt enough to stop being naive. The only reason it looked like weakness is because empaths were using it defensively. They were using their gift like a fire extinguisher instead of a compass. They tried to keep everyone calm. They tried to hold relationships together by carrying more than their share of reality. They became emotional janitors, cleaning up the messes others refused to admit they made. They became human shields, absorbing consequences so other people wouldn't have to feel them. They became interpreters of toxicity, translating chaos into something tolerable, telling themselves that understanding equals safety. And slowly, the empath made a tragic trade. They exchanged self-respect for being the bigger person. They confused peacekeeping with power. They called self-erasure love. They called overgiving strength. They called endless patience wisdom. But patience without boundaries isn't wisdom. It's permission. Jung's work becomes dangerous the moment you apply it to real relationships. Because Jung did not teach goodness as denial. He taught wholeness as integration. The psyche does not become mature by being only light. It becomes mature by integrating its shadow. The parts you were taught to fear, suppress, and label as bad. The shadow is not automatically evil. The shadow is everything you disowned to be accepted. Anger you swallowed because it made people uncomfortable. Instincts you ignored because they didn't sound nice. Boundaries you were taught were selfish. The refusal you never practiced. The ability to walk away without begging someone to understand. The capacity to disappoint people who only loved you when you served them. The shadow is not cruelty. The shadow is the part of you that says, enough. And this is the crucial point most empaths don't realize until life forces it into them. Your shadow is not your enemy. Your shadow is your missing half. Without it, you are not kind, you are incomplete. Without it, you don't have compassion, you have compulsion. Without it, you don't have love, you have a fear-based attachment to being needed. Jung would tell you that a person who cannot say no is not a moral person. They are a person without a spine. Morality requires choice, and choice requires strength. The empath who never developed their shadow was living as half a person. All sensitivity, no force. All understanding, no enforcement. All intuition, no action. And then they wonder why manipulators keep finding them. Predators don't find you because you are weak. Predators find you because you're open and unguarded, because your goodness is unprotected, because you have empathy without teeth. The moment the empath integrates the shadow, everything changes. They still read people instantly. They still sense manipulation. They still perceive what others miss. But now, they do not translate it into self-blame. They do not treat it as a puzzle to solve. They do not try to help someone who is actively draining them. They do not make themselves responsible for other people's emotional immaturity. They see the pattern and they act. And action is the part that terrifies manipulators, because manipulators can handle your feelings. They can handle your tears. They can even handle your anger if it stays emotional and reactive. What they cannot handle is your calm decision, your quiet withdrawal, your refusal to play, your silence that is not fear, but finality. This is what the empath's comeback looks like in reality. Not drama, not revenge, not exposing people for entertainment, not long speeches trying to prove a point. It looks like standards. It looks like a nervous system that no longer negotiates with disrespect. It looks like the end of explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. It looks like your attention becoming selective, your availability becoming earned, your compassion no longer being free access to your life. The empath stops trying to win the approval of those who only respect power. They stop confusing forgiveness with re-entry. They stop calling chronic disrespect a communication problem. They stop auditioning for love. And watch how fast the entire dynamic shifts when you do that. The charming person who used to control the room with charisma is suddenly exposed by your neutrality. You don't attack them. You simply don't react the way they expect. You don't feed their performance with your emotional labor. You don't give them the wide-eyed benefit of the doubt that they convert into permission. You see the love bombing. You see the subtle testing. You see the personality shifts depending on who they're speaking to. And instead of trying to warn everyone, instead of trying to fix the situation, you remove yourself. No explanation that becomes a debate. No confrontation that becomes a theater. Just strategic distance. That's the end of supply. That's the end of access. The guilt tactics stop working because guilt only works on people who still believe their worth is measured by how much they carry for others. The gaslighting stops working because gaslighting requires you to doubt your own perception, and the integrated empath no longer negotiates with inner clarity. The emotional vampire stops working because you no longer treat someone else's chaos as your responsibility. The toxic family loop stops working because you stop reenacting your assigned role. You stop being the peacemaker who pays for everyone's dysfunction with your nervous system. You become the boundary the family never had, and the system will react. It will call you selfish. It will call you cold. It will say you've changed. Of course you changed. That's the point. You didn't become worse. You became whole. And here is the part that makes this bigger than a personal healing story. Jung didn't just map individuals. He mapped cultural shifts. We are entering an era where emotional intelligence isn't decorative. It's structural. The world has become too complex for brute force leadership and shallow charm to carry it. Relationships, teams, communities, and even markets increasingly run on trust, nuance, psychological safety, and the ability to sense what's not being said. This doesn't mean the world has become soft. It means the world has become more psychologically expensive. Manipulation now has a shorter shelf life because information travels faster. Patterns get named, and people are exhausted by performance. The very traits that were mocked as too sensitive are becoming the traits that keep systems alive, but only when they are paired with strength. Only when the empath stops being a service and becomes a standard. So if you're feeling something shift in you, an exhaustion with being endlessly understanding, a refusal to be drained, an anger that feels strangely clean, a clarity that doesn't fade the next morning. Don't panic and call it bitterness. That may be integration. That may be your shadow finally stepping forward, not to destroy your empathy, but to protect it. The empath's greatest evolution is not becoming ruthless. It is becoming unreachable to games. It is leaving the arena where manipulation thrives and building a life where authenticity is the entry fee, where your sensitivity is not a weakness to manage, but an intelligence to direct, where your boundaries are not walls of fear, but doors with locks that only open for the right people. Jung would tell you, this is individuation, becoming so aligned with your inner truth that external approval becomes background noise. Not because you hate people, but because you finally respect yourself. And self-respect changes everything. It changes who can reach you, what you tolerate, what you call love, what you call loyalty, what you call normal. The empath's comeback is quiet, but it rewrites entire dynamics, because the empath stops being predictable. And anyone who depended on you being predictable, overgiving, forgiving too soon, explaining yourself endlessly, loses leverage. You were not weak for feeling deeply. You were untrained. You were running advanced perception with outdated rules. Now, the rules are updating. Now, the missing half is arriving. And when that integration completes, you become a rare kind of person. Someone who can feel truth, see truth, and act on truth without needing permission. Sensitive enough to perceive, strong enough to enforce, compassionate enough to understand, disciplined enough to leave, soft-hearted, but not open-hearted to the wrong hands. That is not a victim. That is not a nice person. That is a psychologically mature human being. And the age that tried to exploit you unintentionally forged exactly what it can't control.